each year between 8,000 and 18,000 people are hospitalized in the U.S. Usually, it occurs during the summer and early fall, but it can happen at any time of the year. So we use fluorescent antibody staining, as well as look for the presence of proteins within the blood serum to diagnose this condition. Quinolones and macrolides are the preferred treatment. These are both antimicrobial agents. And we can control it by reducing bacterial presence in water. So in other words, making sure that pipes are not contaminated with this organism. Chlamydia is the next genus of organisms we'll discuss. These are obligate intracellular parasites, and they are the most common bacterial sexually transmitted organism in humans. So this will be the most common bacterial organism that is sexually transmitted versus HPV, which stands for human papillomavirus, which is the most common virally sexually transmitted organism. Now, in regards to what species of this genus leads to, obviously it will be the STI, sexually transmitted infection, chlamydia. However, they are also the leading causes of infectious blindness worldwide as well. There are 3 primary species, and they are Chlamydia trachomatis, which again is a human pathogen, Chlamydia suis, which only affects swine, and then Chlamydia muradorum, which only affects hamsters as well as mice. So in regards to chlamydia as a sexually transmitted infection, in women they are usually asymptomatic. That doesn't mean that they cannot present with symptoms, but usually the majority of women are asymptomatic. Males have painful urination and pus discharge from the penis. They also develop lymphogranulomas, which causes a genital lesion and buvo in the groin area. The causative agent for the sexually transmitted infection would be Chlamydia trachomatis. And as I mentioned again, very important point to take in, this is the most common STD causing bacterium in the U.S. That's a very important point to note. It also causes neonatal blindness as well as pneumonia, and that's because it can be transmitted during the birthing process if the mother is infected. So it can be transmitted via congenital transmission. There are 2 developmental cycles for this organism, and they are the elementary bodies. And these are considered to be the infected form, so this is how one would acquire it within that particular form. And then there's the reticulate bodies, which are the reproductive form. So once it gets into a new carrier, a new human host, they begin to reproduce, and that would be their reproductive form. Chlamydia trachomatis is an intracellular parasite, so it can live within the cells of humans. What you're looking at here is the formation of a lymphogranuloma in males. In regards to the pathogenesis, it enters the body through scrapes and cuts that can occur via sexual intercourse. They specifically can infect the conjunctival cells or also the cells lining the mucosal membranes of the genitals. And in addition to that, infection in adolescence increases one's risk of cervical cancer. As I mentioned before, Chlamydia trachomatis is the most common sexually transmitted bacterium in the U.S. HPV, which is human papillomavirus, is the most common sexually transmitted virus. Because both of these infectious agents are transmitted in the same mode, which is via sexual transmission, when one acquires Chlamydia trachomatis in adolescence, it does increase their risk of cervical cancer simply because both of these infectious agents are transmitted in the same way. So that's what that particular statement means. This is the most common reportable STD in the U.S., so we have lots of information epidemiologically speaking regarding this. We would actually diagnose it by looking for chlamydial DNA via PCR. PCR stands for polymerase. Chain reaction. This is a molecular biology technique by which we amplify segments of DNA. If we're able to get a positive result with this, then the diagnosis is considered to be pretty accurate. We do treat it with antimicrobial drugs, and the best way to prevent oneself from becoming infected with chlamydia trachomatis is via abstinence or mutual monogamy. Okay, so that concludes this portion of Lecture 3 segment. We will not be getting into the co-op activity. I actually gave you guys the last co-op activity as a homework assignment for this week. So you guys will complete that homework assignment, which is on the peptic ulcer, instead of this co-op activity. And that's what you will be turning in as your homework, and it should be submitted into the Dropbox for week 3. So please submit that via electronic format in the form of a Microsoft Word document into the Dropbox for week 3. Mrs. Felton as well as Mrs. Sharistani will be available next week if you all have any questions. I will have limited access to email, however, I will be checking my email. Therefore, if you do have any questions, please feel free to email me. But again, please also email the subs too. And that concludes today's lecture.